They want me to change the quiz dates from Wednesday to Monday. Is that fine? Okay, so let's just do it. So Monday is going to be what, 24th, 5th, right? Why don't we do it now on the tool? Okay. Here, I believe last announcements. Let's make changes to it here. This one, right? Okay. So now it's going to be what? Monday, 25th of April, right? Okay, both quizzes, and here just make it Monday, 25th of April, and that's it. Let's just submit this and start our new topic here. Our new topic today is exceptions in Java. Exceptions are very similar to the exceptions you learned maybe in Python. If you did C++, usually we don't teach exceptions in C++. So before we start exceptions, we need to see why it's a good idea to use exceptions. What motivates us to use exceptions? Right. So far, when your program runs into a problem, especially runtime problem like division by zero, index out of bound, the program terminates what? Abnormally, right? مظبوط. Good. How can you handle the runtime errors so that the program can continue and terminate what? Gracefully. Yani you can handle these things using actually exceptions. And instead of what? Abnormal termination of your program, the program can either continue running or just terminate but gracefully after closing all the files, open resources, and do some cleaning. This is the subject and topic of this unit, which is what? About exceptions. We'll see so many things in it. And before we go there, let us see what are the things usually covered here. What are the exceptions and what is exception handling? You need to differentiate, Ebanat, between exception and what? Exception handling is what? Calling that I have a problem, right? While exception handling is how to deal with this problem. ماشي. Two things, exceptions and exception handling. Tamam. This is one thing. Second thing is the advantages of using what? Exception what? Handling. Instead of abnormal termination, we can see things happen and work, and the program might be able to continue without any problem. Okay, then we need to see three different types of exceptions: errors and exceptions, and two types of exceptions. One is called checked exceptions and the other is called what? Unchecked exceptions. This is very important. So we'll distinguish first between errors and exceptions, then two types of exceptions, checked versus what? Unchecked. Then if you write a code and your code might throw an exception, tamam? You want to tell others that my code might generate an exception. How to declare to others that your code might generate an exception? This is called declaring an exception. Yani telling others that my method or my code what generates what? An exception. Tamam. This is called what? Declaration. طيب. Next one is throwing an exception. What's throwing? Okay. Throwing is an action. Generating an exception or raising an exception. There is a difference between throwing an exception and handling an exception. Throwing an exception is just saying, okay, this is an exception. Whoever needs to handle it, handle it. You are not handling it. There is a difference between throwing and what? Handling. And we will see then when to use try catch to handle exceptions and explain how exceptions are propagated from one method to another. Good. So how to know what went wrong, asking the exception about the problems, and see finally and finally close. Maybe you have seen finally close before in Python, but we will revisit it here. And to use exceptions only, or uh, logic only, when to use exceptions, when it's not good idea to use exceptions. Let's see this now. Okay, so exception handling first. You know, most with what? One of the ones that usually come across. What is it? Division by what? Is it an exception? Division by zero, ya banat? Yes. Tab, look at this now. Do you see the code here? Look at the code. Do you see it? Okay, line 10, integer number. Line 11, integer number 2. Does that make sense? طيب. If you input 10 and 2, no problem, صح? And let me run it with 10 and 2, make sure everything runs fine. Here, I'll say 10 and 2. Okay, no problem. However, when the problem arises, يا بنات, 10 and 0, صح? What's going to happen now? Number 2 is 0. If you do a division, there will be an arithmetic exception. Does that make sense? Is this name new to you? Arithmetic exception? Maybe not very new, but at least you know division by zero is one of those exceptions you handled before. So what's this, ya banat, now? Our code, what? Thrown an exception. What's the exception? And the program terminated, yes or no? The program, why the program terminated? Because there was an exception and no one handled what? The exception. That's why the program abnormal termination. And the program did not continue. And if you have some code here, okay, let me write some code here. Okay, okay, continue. For example, let's see. If I run this now with 10 and 0, most probably continue is not going to be printed because the code will not reach there. The execution will not reach line 16 because there will be an exception raised in line 14. صح ولا لا يا بنات؟ ماشي الحال. However, if you catch it, you know something else is going to happen. Let's see quotient with if. Now, same problem. I will try to show you the same question here. Look at it. How we avoided the exception here, Amana? Tell me, please, here, at the back. How we avoided the exception? Look at line 13, sir. We use if statement. We are not using try catch block, sir. We are just using simple logic to avoid what? Exception. Does it work? With zero. It does, sir. Because we will come back to this and say sometimes no need to create those complicated exceptions if it can be handled with simple if statement. Does that make sense, Yamana? Okay, so here what? You know that if you enter zero, what's going to happen? I will tell you that using logic in my code, using simple if statement, right here, 0, simple if statement in line 13 tells you that there is an exception and the code will not be executed, صح? ماشي الحال. So first one was exception went unhandled. Second one, exception was like avoided or prevented using what? Simple if statement. طيب. Sometimes you call a method and that method throws an exception, صح? يعني not necessarily inside the same code. So here, let us see this here. Here I have a method. Let me just call it divide. I'll call the method divide, تمام? Just to make it simple. And I'm calling get from here. Good, ya banat. Save. Look at this now. Input number 1, number 2. I get number 1, number 2. But I call which method? Divide. Divide method. See what happens here. The method itself will do what? Will check if the what? The value 2 is equal to 0, then it will give you a message and exit. This is exiting the program, صح? Exiting the program, right? See now here, if I enter 5 and 0, the program exists, صح? It does not return maybe, or if there is anything else to do, It will not be done. Why? Because the program exits in line what? In line number 8. ماشي صح؟ أيوة سندس. A number of errors. There is an error. يعني you will do operating system next semester inshallah, okay? Sometimes we can say system exit 0, exit 1. Usually number of errors, okay? Exit 0, no errors. ماشي? It's not a big deal. You can use 0 or 1 now, but 1 is with error. Tamam, good, excellent. So let's see now. The 3 examples I have shown you, they all handle exceptions or do not handle exceptions. Some of them use if, some of them don't. Huh? But there was no exception handling. It was logic in the what code. Now, can we use try catch? Yes, we can. Instead of just writing or getting troubles because of exceptions unhandled, we can use what? Try catch. But before we see this, with the example I'm about to show you is using exceptions. You will see the advantages of using exception handling. We know them, some of them from before, right? It enables a method to throw an exception to its what? To its caller. Without this capability, a method must handle the exception or terminate the program. I'll show you 2 examples first, then we'll go to the one here in this one. Let me show you the example 1, this one. Here, يا بنات, to avoid the problem, what do you think I could have done? Try and put this code inside, صح? Yes or no? Okay. Put all this code, the one that might throw an exception, inside the try block. And here what? Catch. What was the exception name? Arithmetic, صح? Arithmetic exception. ماشي? E. And how to know the message? Okay, how to know what went wrong? Okay, sys out يعني E get message for example. تمام? Or just E. Good? So now your program will continue running even with what? Exceptions. صح ولا لا يا بنات? Right? You agree with this? Your program continues running even with what? Exception. We will see this message now. Look at this. I will enter 10. I'm in line 10 actually. I will enter 10. I will enter 0. I am in line 11. صح? Now I'll go inside line 13 and there will be an exception thrown in line what? 14. صح? It should be handled inside the catch block that starts at line 15. But the program continues after that. Do you see this, يا بنات? They tell you there was what? There was a division by 0 exception. You know what's this now? And the program what? Continue. So there was no termination of your program. Imagine if it's a loop. And we will see one with a loop, okay? We will see one, the loop continues, okay? So I did this try catch. طيب بس أنا in the code, the one I showed you 10 minutes ago, I called the method to do division, صح? I will go here, call with method. This method did what? The division. What was the problem with this method? This method did not handle the exception. The program itself will terminate if what? If number 2 is 0. صح ولا لا? Let's do something else. If what? يلا. This is an error. صح? Throw. Okay. What's the name of the exception يا بنات? Arithmetic exception. And you can put a message. I division by 0 error. I'll show you what happens now. Okay, just do this. Throw a new arithmetic exception, and the message you want to tell others. Right now, what's this method? Maybe this is the first time you see it in this course. What's this method? Now here, when you call it, if you send number to a 0, the method does not handle the exception. The method only what? Throws. يعني the method divide does not handle the exception. If both numbers are fine, it returns the result. However, if number 2 is 0, it will an exception. It will tell you there was a problem. But the exception, who handles it? Okay. Whoever calls the method must do what? Try catch. Listen carefully, Abana. Whoever calls the method, this is very, very important. Now, whoever calls the method, okay, whoever calls the method now, if the method throws an error, he needs to catch it. This method, the one you see now, divide, does it catch the error or only throw it? Does it handle it? No. صح. طيب خلاص. Then here, what do you think I need to do? Try and call the method and what? Output the result. And catch what? What catch what, ya banat? Same type of exception or one of it. What? Arithmetic exception E and sys out E dot get message. Now look at this now. I call a method. The method might throw an exception. صح? If the method finds number 2 0, it will throw an exception. Who is going to catch it? Where? Line what? Give me the line number. 24. Because now you say try, call this method. If the method throws an exception, where you need to handle it? طيب, let us do this now. I will run it. Two integers, 10 and 2. No problem at all, صح? Now I will do this and like 10 and 0. Now what's going to happen? The method will throw an exception at line 7. Do you agree with this, يا بنات? صح? طيب, then this exception will be handled by line what? 24. ماشي الحال. Let me press enter. Division by 0 error. Where did we get this message from? Here, صح? يعني this is the message you wanted your, okay? You can change it. I cannot divide by 0. Does that make sense? You decide what message, I cannot divide by 0. And now if you run it again, you see the message you provided actually in the constructor of the exception. 10 and 0, I cannot divide by 0. Does that make sense? So this method, divide, does it handle an exception or just throw it? Okay. If you don't use try catch here, if you don't use try catch, and you don't have to. It's not compulsory, by the way. Here in this example, if you don't, and there is an exception thrown by the divide method, the program terminates. صح ولا لا? Right? And you would not know what happened. ماشي? So let's see here. With exception here, this is the code here. 3, throw new arithmetic exception, try, catch, and the program continues after this one, as we shown before. ماشي الحال. So this is one advantage, that if a method generates or throws an exception, it does not have to handle it itself. Is it a good idea or bad idea? Well, sometimes it's a very good idea. Why? Because I call your method, Maria, I call your method, and your method generates an exception. She calls the same method, and the method might generate the same exception. But for me, I will handle that exception in my own way, صح? And she will handle that exception in her own what? You just tell us that I have a problem, okay? You just tell us that we have what? A problem. And how to tell us that you have a problem? By throwing what? Throwing the exception. The try catch will handle it. Does that make sense? This is very, very important. ماشي. Handling input mismatch. You have seen this error before. You have in Python maybe type error اسمه صح? I'm not sure, but what is input mismatch? Like scanner, you are expected to input what? Integer, you input text. What's the problem with those programs? Sometimes you need to keep inputting data, but when you get those errors, the program terminates. Can we just ignore this, for example? Let me show you this code. This is a very nice code. Handling what? We said input mismatch exception. Let's pay attention here. This logic, so many times students ask me about something similar. Scanner, new scanner. Look at this, ya banat. Boolean continue input is equal to what? True. What loop is this? Do while. Okay. While what? So as long as this is true, you will get input. Okay. Enter an integer. It's inside what, ya banat? Next line. If you enter an integer, there will be no problem, صح? Because here, what method you are using to read it? Next end, صح? So here the number is entered and count input here or continue input will be changed to false, and which makes the loop what? False, and the loop terminates. خلاص, you inputted something that was correct, valid, okay? What happens if you input text here? If you input text, there will be an exception generated here, صح? So lines 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 will be skipped, right? And we will go to where? Line what? 20. They will give you an error, and here they will say what? Input next line. Why they do input next line? To clear what? To clear what? The current input. طيب. But did they set this one to false? So you will be asked again to what? To input the number. So my point is, this is one way of forcing the loop either to continue or to stop by handling what? Exception. Let us see this one. I enter 10, says you enter 10, and that's it. Everything is what? Is perfect. Now let me enter what? Why I get this error? Where is this error? Try again, صح? And then what? Next line, and now the loop continued, and they asked me to input data again and again, huh? I will input K. I will input L. The program only stops after you input what? An integer. طبعا يا بنات, here we did this to keep the loop running, or you can, the logic can change. You can use it to keep the loop what? Or to terminate the loop, or the opposite. يعني تمام. يعني you can change the condition here. It's up to you. If you want to continue the loop with exceptions or not, it's up to you. ماشي الحال. Good. يعني if you want your program to keep requesting values, you don't have to set this to true here. Okay. تمام. You can ask the user here, for example, like enter a value for continue, true, false, whatever he or she. تمام. Okay, I'll just skip this and go back to the slides. So we saw how to handle what? Input what? Mismatch, and the loop continued. Here we see so many types of exceptions. طيب, what is the use of all of these? Let us know. We know objects, huh? Object is the what? The super grandparent of what? Of all objects, right? What's after object here? We have what? Throwable, صح? مظبوط. طيب, then for throwable we have two main subclasses. What are they? احنا شغلنا is going to be here, right? Our work is going to be on with what? With exceptions. Now, exceptions and what? Errors. And exceptions, as you see, there are so many classes, and many of them have what? So many what? So many subclasses. Does that make sense يا بنات? ماشي الحال. طيب, okay. طيب, Sundus, what do you see here at the bottom here? Error. Okay, tell me what name? Linkage error. What? Virtual machine error. Those errors, يا بنات, the errors you see here are usually big problems, not resulting from your program, not resulting from your code directly. The error class describes what? Internal what? System errors. Such as what? Such errors rarely occur, and you cannot do a lot, by the way. Yeah, not much to be done to handle errors. As a user, and as a programmer, if one does occur, there is a little you can do with what? With, it's beyond this. Usually this is handled not by a programmer, okay? Usually by system administrator or someone else. Yani for you, for us, this is out of the question. We will handle what, or we will deal with what, ya banat? With exceptions. ماشي. Look at this now. We have exceptions. Exceptions have many reasons and many types of exceptions. Exceptions describe errors caused by your what? Program, and this error can be code or what? And handled by programs. Do you know some of them? Yes or no? Let's see, we will see some of them. Tamam. So many exceptions. But we have one group of exceptions that is very important and very common. What do you see here? Which superclass they are? What's the superclass here, man? Okay, runtime exceptions. Right, good. How many subclasses you see? Maybe you see 4 or 5 here, but actually there are so many subclasses. Of which one? I remember this name, runtime exception. Tamam? Runtime exception is caused by what? Programming, such as bad casting. What else? Array goes out of bound. What else? Numeric error like arithmetic exception and division by zero error and all these things. ماشي الحال. طيب, let's see this now. Okay. Do you know any one of the top 4 exceptions here? Have you seen, why you're writing your code? You don't have to know what is it, but have you encountered something like this? ايش هو يا ستي هون؟ ايش which one? Input? Where is it? When it happens? When you are expected to input one data type and you do another. What else? What else? Tell me. Arithmetic exception I showed you today, صح? What's null pointer exception? Let us say you say circle 0, circle C, but you did not say new circle. You did not say new circle, تمام? So circle C, can you set the radius of C? It is still null, صح? If you try to access something that is still null, okay, you will get which exception? طيب. Today, when I used arithmetic exception, when I divided 1 over 0, was it compulsory to use try catch or optional? Optional. This is the key point now. It was optional to use what? Try catch. صح؟ طيب. Since it was optional to use try catch, I can tell you also null pointer exception, it will be optional because it's unpredictable. Input mismatch exception, did you use it before when you encountered those problems? It was optional, صح? طيب. Last week we finished topic, input, output, and file, صح? Could you open a file without using try catch? Did it accept that from you? Try. Can you just say file open or new file? It's impossible. Why? You must mandatory. Okay, good answer. Mandatory to use try catch with file not found exception, but not with arithmetic exception. Why? Why? Simply because there are 2 types of exceptions. Some exceptions are called checked exceptions, and the other, okay, most probably they're going to be named what? Unchecked exceptions. طيب. Runtime error and their subclasses are all known as what? Do you know why I told you to pay attention to runtime exceptions? And all of what? All of what? Subclasses of which one? You see them so many of course يعني. طيب هلا we are done with this. The second paragraph is very important now. What? All other exceptions are known as what? With checked. What? Meaning what? That what? The compiler forces you to write what? Try catch. You cannot what? You cannot open a file without using what? Try catch. You must handle the exception and declare exception and do the exception and when it's checked, you need to handle it. It's not optional. With unchecked, it's optional. And remember, unchecked exceptions are all subclasses of who? Of who? Runtime exception. Good. And unchecked exceptions, before we go to this slide, I prepared some code here and let us see. Maybe we have some code here. All these are what? Unchecked exceptions. But why I say the unchecked exceptions? Why I'm so confident? Because they are subclasses of what يا بنات؟ أو runtime exception. مظبوط. تمام. Okay. طيب. Which exception this one might generate or might throw? Arithmetic exception. صح؟ طيب. Okay. This one also what? Arithmetic exception. طيب. Look at this. Integer array list. ماشي. How many elements in the array? 5. And you try to print list 5. You know, list 5 is invalid, صح? It will be from 0 to 4. What exception do you think here you're going to get? Array index out of bound, she says. طيب, let us make sure she's right. This is it, صح? Let us just comment everything here. So we test one by one. Here, this is our array, صح? ماشي? Good. يلا. What exceptions? Array index out of bound. What's the message? 5 is more than the array maximum boundary, صح? Is this checked or unchecked exception? Unchecked because I could run the code without it, صح? Can I handle it? Yes, it's what? It's optional. And honestly, it's nice to handle it while I can copy paste this thing, right? Okay, here. Huh? I can now easily and you get that صح ولا لا, right? Okay. Sys out e.get message ماشي. تمام. Let's do this now. But now what I want you to see that the program continues, صح? Let me just output anything, any message here. Okay, I'm still alive here. Okay, so our program continues to work. Does that make sense? Okay, so you saw how to handle the exception. Okay, طيب, back to business. What about this one? Look at it. ABC is a string, huh? And why input mismatch? Character at 3. Index again, صح? It's not array, but they call it string index out of bound exception. What's the, you don't have to remember all of these things, but look at it, where is it? Here's the code, yeah, Banat. Okay, let me just comment all this thing, all this, and I need here, okay, good, excellent, here. ABC, string character at 0 is A, character at 1 is B, character at 2 is what? C. So character at 3 is null, صح? Beyond the مظبوط, index out of bounds, صح? So what's the, okay, see what's the name of the exception? String index out of bound. With array it was what? Array index out of bound. It's checked or unchecked? Unchecked, okay? تمام, good? ماشي الحال, ممتاز. Let's continue with this. What about this one? Object is equal to what? Null. طيب, I can make it anything else, not necessarily an object. تمام. Okay, let me just see here. Model. I'll just copy paste any class, very simple class here. Hopefully it does not. Okay, good. Here, you see the account class. I'll take it to here. I'll go to test output. I will say here account A. Okay, account A is equal to new account. I need, in this case, I need to add what to the account here? Maybe I need to provide what? Default constructor, just to make it simple here. Okay, deselect all and generate. Now my code should be valid here, right? Come on. Account has so many methods, صح? Okay, like get first name, تمام? Anything. If I call it here a new account, can I say sysout a dot get first name يا بنات؟ Huh? Okay. Now what will be the first name? The first name will be null. صح؟ لا, sorry. This exception from before. I will. Okay. Let us see now. What? But did it generate an exception? Okay. There is a difference between calling a string and tell you the string is null, and the number, all the numbers will be what now in the account? 0. But there is a difference if you say what? Account A and what? Now what's the difference? There is no account at all, right? You just say this. This is an intention, صح? No object is created. Now you get what exceptions here? What? Okay. Account A. What do you say here? A. Initialize variable, huh? Null. Tamam. Good. Now what do you get here? What? Null pointer exception. There is no account at all. ماشي الحال. Finally, we see another exception. Okay, here object O is equal to null, and no, not this one. The one where try to cast an object to a string. Okay, here. Okay, string D is equal to string O. There used to be something else here, right? Okay, so now let's just do this here. Okay, no need for this account object, right? Okay, now I'm working with lines what, Yavanat? Tell me the line numbers, 16 and 17. Now go ahead, yalla. Okay, object is equal to new object. Can I say new object, huh? Okay, tamam. Now, the object is not null, but there is a problem now. What is it? Look at the error. What is it? You cannot cast an object to a string, for example. You will say casting, not printing, tamam? You cannot cast, for example, a book to a circle. In this case, if the cast is not possible, what type of exception you get? So okay, good. So now you are familiar with multiple types of exceptions. Tell me one. Here, string index out of bound exception. Here, null pointer exception. Here, what? Arithmetic exception. What? Class cast exception. And here, array index out of bound exception. Does that make sense, Yabana? Okay, these are all what? Common exceptions that, good. ماشي الحال. Okay, now tell me about this class. Look at it. What do you think the output is? When the output is 30, what's going to happen? Here, there is a try catch. If the value is less than 40, you throw an exception, and that exception is caught here. صح ولا لا? Right? Okay. You are throwing an exception. Okay, so when it's 30, what? Value is too small. صح ولا لا? Right? And the program continues. Yes or no? When it is 30, you will get what? Value too small, and the program what? Continues. If it's 50, what's going to happen? No exception is thrown, صح? And yes, the program continues. مظبوط. That's it, صح? مظبوط? Okay, good. Now look at this. And I need you to pay attention to, there are two codes here, not one. In this code, the first one, the for loop contains what? Try catch. In the second one, the try catch contains what? A for loop. There is an exception, صح ولا لا? Where يا بنات exception? You try to divide by arithmetic exception ولا لا يا ستي؟ صح؟ مظبوط، ممتاز. طيب. Okay, but the exception is caught. So the program continues. The loop continues. Does that make sense? You get this يا بنات؟ The loop continues. It does not end. طيب. See here. Let's take the first one. The program prints I. First time I is what? 0. Second time 1. تمام? Okay, but then there is an exception. Every time in the loop there will be an exception. Let's see the first one here. I think I called it test A. Yeah, here. Yeah, but I'll make it 5. I'll make it from. So here it will print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes or no, Yabana? But every time there is a statement that generates an exception and is being handled, by the way. Yani our code, every iteration, the code will output what? Will output the value of I, then what? Encounters an exception and handle it and then come back. صح ولا لا? Right. If you don't try catch, you cannot come back. See? 0, 1, 2, 3. This output's coming from line 6. Do you approve it? Do you agree with this? صح ولا لا? Right? مظبوط. And the other things are coming from inside the catch. So, تمام. طيب see this one يا ستي, huh? Look at this one. If I don't output any message, you would not even know that there was an exception. You get this? صح? يعني the program could manage and handle the exception and continue. صح? You saw that exception because I did sys out. مظبوط معانا يا بنات. Good? طيب the other code is the other way around now. Let's look at it. Let's make it 5 here. Try. Now here there is a difference. Where do you catch the exception? Inside the loop or outside the loop? In the previous example, is the memory تبعتكم is not that good. In the previous example, catching was part of the loop, صح ولا لا, right? But in this example, if you throw an exception, like here, there will be an exception thrown, صح? It is handled outside what? And if you come outside the loop, yeah, city, what's going to happen? Is not free to go back inside the loop, right? So let us see how this thing happens. After 0, you get what exception? After you output 0, صح? Right. Then you get an exception, but the exception is handled where? The try catch is okay in closing the loop. So the catch is outside the loop, did not continue. Did you see these unique two examples? Huh? Okay. So now you came out. So the program would not continue like the previous ones, huh? Because here you handle the exception inside what? Inside the loop. Because the loop contains try catch, but there the try catch contains what? Okay, good, excellent. Let's see another example here. Okay, we did this thing. And I believe that, okay, we have seen 3 examples so far. Here, output. Now, this one? Here? Okay, good. What? Catch, because the exception is thrown here. صح? Well, is there a statement? This is, you will throw it based on your logic. Okay, this is a good questions, even though you would think what? It's not a good question. She says, why do we need a throw? We have catch already. But here, we have our own logic to throw the exception. There is nothing in Java will throw an exception if your value is below 30. صح ولا لا? Right? Yeah. Where's continue? No. Here you throw, there's no loop first here in this example. صح ولا لا? There is no loop, right? And here, in Java, there is nothing says. If it's below 40, it's an exception, صح? But you want to throw an exception if the value is below what? So in this case, you must use the word what? Throw. Yani I want to throw an exception if the value is below what? 40. And if you throw here, it will be caught where? It will be caught here. Is this your question? Tell me if it's not. Tell me if it's not. Okay, ask me loudly, but tell me what's the question. If it's more than 40, it will come only to what? If there is no exception, the catch block will be ignored, right? Then what happens? It will go to the statement right after the catch block. Good. But here, when you say throw, you are throwing an exception. Let us say you try to set your GPA 5. And in my code, I say if GPA is greater than 4, throw exception. Good. I throw exception whenever I want. I need to use the word what? Throw here. Because there is no exception actually. If we don't touch this code, no exceptions. Huh? But if there is an exception, I want to throw an exception in one case. We will see this in the next examples. We will see this here more. Okay, now very important things here. Declare and what? Declaring, throwing, and what? Please pay attention, and that's very important here. You really need to understand this. And you look at method 2, not method 1. Do you see something unique on method 2? This is the word, maybe it's the first time you see it. So what is the word? Throws. It's in the method declarations, right? So what do you think if you see this? Method 2 possibly is gonna throw exception. Possibly, this is called declaration. This is method 2's way of telling you that if you use me, be careful because I might what? Throw what? An exception. And they told you this using the statement here, which is called what? Throws. And this throws is calling what is called what? Declaration. Does that make sense so far? Good? Fine. Now in method 2 you have a lot of code. In that code, if something wrong happens, method 2 will use what? Throw what? Okay. Throwing exception is different from what? Handling. Throwing is calling the police. Handling is the police comes and fix the problem. Tamam. So here, throwing, method 2 does not handle it. Does it handle the exception? Or just what? Type. So what's this then? What's this statement? See the difference between the word throws here with S and here without S. This is the verb. Type. So now we know what is declaration and we know what is. Now how to call method 2? You are in method 1 يا ستي. تمام؟ بوزير. You are in method 1. Try. Call method 1. تمام? Then what? Is it optional now to use try catch to? Is it optional, Ululi? Tell me. No. Because what? Method 2 tells you up front, you cannot call me unless, because I don't handle the exception. Does method 2 handle the exception? No. So it doesn't, it just throws the exception, right? So someone needs to what? Handle it using the catch clause, So if method 2 tells you, hello, I might declare an exception, you can call it now try catch. Now tell me, if there is an error in method 2 throws an exception, where the exception is going to be handled? Is going to be handled where, Ululi? In method 1. Okay. Which statement in method 1? The catch. This one, صح? Right. The catch of method 1 is going to handle it. ماشي الحال يا بنات. You see how to do this now. I did this before, but without throws. You remember the quotient I did the first time? I said it's optional, but later I will show you that when you call a method that declares itself as exception thrower, it's not an optional one. I will take you to a very simple code. We did maybe the first code actually we did today, with a method. I think I made changes here. Talau. Here, what was it? Here, the method throws, صح ولا لا, right? And I can call it without try catch, right? Because the method does not declare itself. طب شوفوا معي هلا ايش هلا throws. Okay, let's see this throws. And what's the name of the exception? Arithmetic what? And I'm writing it in the wrong place, صح? Okay, I need to go to the method name, صح? Here, throws arithmetic exception. Does that make sense now? Now, this method divide is declared to what? To throw what? And if there is a problem, it will throw it. صح ولا لا? Right? Where is the verb here? Throw. Here, declaration. تمام. Now you cannot, by the way, call it without try catch. Now, look at this, يا بنات. Now you cannot call the method without what? Try catch. Let's see this now. Integer divide exception. طيب, let's see if this one works or not. Enter two integer, perfect. And 3, it worked. طيب, let us do 10 and 0. 10 and 0. Okay, but it worked. You said it's not going to work. What is the difference between a method that is not compulsory to use try catch and a method is what? Compulsory. Remember, what error type is this? Go back to slides number 4 and 5. What error type is this, Yabanan? Runtime. Is it checked or unchecked? Unchecked, صح? طيب استنوا معي. This is unchecked and I did use it. طيب, let me go with what? With checked. But look at this code. Tell me it's still fresh, صح? We finished 2 days ago, right? What's this method? Open file throws. Throws what? File what? Is it checked or unchecked? Checked, صح? And here, if inside, if you have a problem, you throw what? File not found exception. File is not available. Does that make sense? Good. Now, can you call this method? What's the method name? Open file what? Open file throw. Look at it. Can you call it? Please. You need what? You need try catch. Why? What's the difference between this and input mismatch? Input mismatch is what? Unchecked. File not found is what? Does that make sense? No? Okay, wait. We still have more examples. So now, every method must take, we forgot one important thing. What? This is what? Checked exceptions it might throw. Can one method throw multiple exceptions? Yes, it can. What? You separate them by what, Yabana? Good. When the program detects an error, so remember, what's the word here you see? In the declaration, صح? Inside the method, if you encounter an exception, how you throw an exception? The verb will be what? Throw. ماشي الحال. Good. طيب. Now, look at this. In the definition, throws illegal whatever exception. If you here, for example, look at this method. Set radius. If it's positive, tamam. Else what? Throw what? Illegal. So this is the here where throws and now can you call set radius without try catch? Why? Because if it's checked, no, صح? It's unchecked, tamam. Okay, good. طيب. Look at this now. I will go back to the file open. I tried to show you, يا بنات. Look at this file open. I have two methods. This is very, very good example. I have two methods. One method, it's called what? open file. Is it declared to throw an exception? يعني you can call it without even what? Without try catch. صح ولا لا يا بنات? Right? طيب, this is one thing. Good. Second thing is what? I have another method that does the same task, but this time what? Declares itself as what? Declares itself as what? Throwing what? تمام. Good. Now we have a question. The first method, open file, it handles the exception. Do you see this, يا بنات? You see it? If there is a file not found, you cannot open a file without that, صح? It opens the file, but the exception, where's the exception is handled? Inside what? Inside the method. These methods, if they throw an exception and handle it and all these things, you don't have to worry about them. Problem started there and problem what? Ended there. يعني here, I can call this method open file without anything. Good? ماشي؟ صح? It will work. And there will be an exception. And the file I'm trying to open is not found. Run. The file, okay, file is not found, and this is what? Exception handling, right, يا بنات? طيب. However, the second method here, I'm trying to call, what here? Says what? I will throw what? File not found exception, which is what, yeah, بنات? Okay, it is what? Checked, صح? And here, but do they handle it here in line 40? This is handling or throwing an exception? Throwing an exception, صح? تمام. So now, if you call that method, see what? Now you will see maybe different thing also. If I call this method now, they tell me, hey, see, you have two options. What are my first option? Try catch, صح ولا? Okay. You remember in abstract classes, we said you need to, or in subclasses of abstract, you need to implement all what? Abstract methods, otherwise declare yourself what? Type. Here, actually, they gave you these two choices. What is the first choice? The first two choices, try what? Try catch. If the method throws file not found exception, you catch it here, صح? What is the other option they gave you? Declare yourself what? Now see in the constructor what we did here. We said what? Opens what? The one who calls the open file needs to do what? You see? I call a method that throws an exception, but that method is being called by another method. But that method doesn't want to handle it. Open file now doesn't want to handle it. Who needs to handle it? The one who calls what? Look at this now. شوفوا. Okay, this code was working even 5 minutes ago, صح? Line 50. When you call the constructor here, the constructor now, what? Throws an exception, صح? What is exception? Checked or unchecked? If checked, do you have a choice with checked? So now you have two choices. What? Here, either declare yourself what? Throws the same exception, or Allah بعينك وإيش? So now who catches the exception? All the methods I'm calling, none of them is catching them. صح? The last one, which opens the file, it will throw the exception to the second one. صح? The second one will throw the exception to the constructor, and the constructor will throw the exception to what? To the main method. Who handles it now? This is called propagation. Did you get that, Shabana? Hey, the main catches the. Oh, okay. This, you cannot do it. Someone must. Okay, someone must. But if there is no main, it could be a long chain. يعني here, هلا here. Okay. See, this error is coming from the main method. You agree, yes or يا بنات صح? Because who handles the exception? None of the above. All of them, they just what? Throw or rethrow. Do you get my point? What is rethrow? If someone throws an error and you receive it, you don't catch it, so you need to do what? Rethrow it. Tamam. Let me just output the message here, so we make sure it's what? It's coming from here. Okay, error here. Tamam. So we know the error is coming from here. Good. ماشي الحال. طيب, now I can go to this. Okay, يلا. Catching exceptions. Statements that may throw exceptions. How many exceptions we have here? 1, 2, and n. ماشي الحال. Good. Okay, catching exception. Try. Method 1 catches exception. Method 2 catches exception. Statement 5, it depends. Which exception was thrown? You get my point? Which exception was thrown? And which one catches that exception or handle that exception? Maybe method 2 throws exception 5. Exception 5 is handled by method 0, not by method 1. Method 1 throws exception 5. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's like a call stack. Look at this now. This is more clear. P2, method P2 throws what? Which exception? Is it checked or unchecked? Excellent. Now, to call P2, you have two choices. As a P1, P1 needs to use what? P2. You have two choices. What are they? Either use what? Or is it clear? طبعا. If you do this and someone calls B2, B1, if you do this choice here, the one here, and someone calls, sorry, this one, and someone calls B1, that B1 must implement what? Try what? Catch. If it doesn't, then it must use what? Does that make sense? Let's say B0. B0 calls B1. If it calls this B1 implementation, then it must try catch. If not try catch, then what? Throws. And the one who calls until the error is being what? ماشي الحال. I think the idea is clear now. Is it getting clear? طيب. Declaring, throwing, and catching. طيب. Example. This example, declaring, throwing, and what? Catching. We did this already, but let us see a ready example. I have an example here. Circle with what? Exception. Let's see the circle with exception here. Circle with exception. Look at it, يا بنات. Circle with exception up here. I want you to see exactly where is this. This is the constructor, يا بنات, صح? How many constructors I have for the circle? 2. تمام? Okay. The second one calls which method? The first one sets the radius to be defined, right? ماشي? Okay. Look at the set radius now. This is the topic for class now, صح? What's set radius? Throws what? Illegal what? Argument what? Exception. If you provide negative radius, this is the right way how to do it. Yani we have done it what? Set 0 high because we did not cover exceptions to this depth, right? So now I have a question. Okay, here. If you call the circle with this constructor, no problem. Do you need to use try catch? But if you call the circle with this constructor, do you need to use try catch? Why? Okay, set radius here calls which one? Huh? Set radius, does it have try catch? Okay, but set radius what? Throws. تمام. طب let me show you the test. Try catch what? Is it a good way to do it? احنا forget about compulsory or mandatory now. صح? Now, if there is an exception thrown there, okay, which one will throw an exception now? Tell me, Abanat, which one? C2, صح? Look at this. But the program continues, right? Of course, if you don't use try catch, is it gonna work? يلا قولوا لي. Sorry. Is it gonna work? Why? It's not checked, صح? right? But if the exception went unhandled and uncaught, صح ولا لا, right? But forget about compulsory or optional. We are done with this, صح? We are done with that, صح? But now you can handle it. But which one you can handle? You cannot handle it. Okay? Okay. Which one you cannot handle it? Like what? Open file. Can you do it without try catch? Can you? طيب. نرجع للتست circle with what? With exception. Okay, let's see this one. Good. Try. Any question here? طيب. I will go to circle with exception. Okay, circle with exception here. Can I, which method I'm calling here? Set what? Radius. Void except illegal argument exception. Okay, which one throws illegal argument exception? The set radius. مظبوط. Good. طيب. So now, what's the difference? The only difference between IO and illegal argument exception is one is optional and one is what? Compulsory. تمام. Good. طيب. Let us see some examples here before we finish. Okay. Rethrowing exception. Did we see this? Inside the catch, for example, you may, okay, a file open, the one I did. It says catch file not found exception, but inside it, it does what? Throw file not found exception. Take it, handle it. Does that make sense? Okay, finally close. What's the use of finally, Abana? You know what's finally? You know, yes or no? Tell me. Shaking heads, what? This, yes or no? This is no. You have seen it in Python if you have done Python. Finally, statements will be executed whether there was an exception or there was no exception. Tamam. Good. Look at this. No exceptions in the statement. Which one will be executed now? Tell me, yalla. The statements were? Why the statements in finally? No exceptions. So the catch block will be skipped. Yes or no? Good. After finally, the statements after that. ماشي الحال. Suppose an exception of type what? Listen carefully here. Exception of type what, يا بنات? Exception 1. Okay. What happens? Yalla, tell me. Exception 1. So it will go to where? And then what? And then what? Let's see if this is right. Yes. 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 Does that make sense, يا بنات? Good. Statement 2 generated an exception of type what? 2. Then this block will be skipped. صح ولا لا? Yes or no? Good. And this block will be executed. After executing the code in block 2, what happens? Finally, after finally, they will go to what? لحظة شوي. You forgot something. There was something inside what? Exception what? Exception 2. They handled the exception and they have thrown another exception. Yani after finally, still there will be what? This is the rare case, advanced scenario, but the normal scenario is like either throwing or handling. طيب. Now, exception handling separates what? Error code or error handling code from what? Normal programming. Thus making program easier to read and to modify. Good. However, if you try to handle or catch all exceptions, this is too much. If you try to handle or catch all exceptions, your code will be endless. صح ولا لا? Right? So, because it requires instantiating new object, rolling back to the call stack, and so many things. What do you suggest? Sometimes it's very easy to prevent the exception. You remember division by zero? صح ولا لا? Right? We actually we did not. Okay. So an exception occurs in a method if you want the exception to be processed by its what? Caller. هلا to handle or to throw an exception in a method. Okay. The question is now to handle or to what? To throw an exception. Handle it. You handle it inside the method. If you want to do that, just do try catch. However, if you throw it, who's going to handle it? the caller of this method. So this is when to throw. So when you decide not to handle, to throw an exception, if you want who? The caller to handle it. طب when to handle it? When you think you need to handle it, not the caller. Maybe you throw another exception for the caller. ماشي؟ طيب يا بنات, look at this. When to use exception مثلا. Sometimes it's very easy not to use exception. We should use try catch block in this code. Should you use it to avoid null pointer exception? It's possible, صح? It's possible. You should use it to deal with unexpected error conditions. Do not use it to deal with simple expected. For example, the following code, هذا كل الكود, all this code can be replaced with what? With this. صح ولا لا? Right? Sometimes no need, صح? But sometimes it's unavoidable, صح? So if it's just checking a value or something, no need to keep throwing exceptions and propagating exceptions and handling exceptions. No need. Does that make sense, يا بنات? Okay. We will start this quick MA next time. Just want you to see. Okay, let's see some summary. Okay. And okay, before the summary يا بنات, I need 1 minute of your time. Please. آخر محاضرة هاي. تمام? Okay. Now, what's the output of this one? What's the output? Null pointer exception. Yalla, who says null pointer exception? Which one? What will be the output? Ululi. Tell me about the output. Don't give me two choices, huh? You know, I consider both of them wrong. Okay. Which one? Aywa. It will do the first one. It will not reach the second one. Why? Because the first one is a super class of what? The second one, صح? So every null pointer exception is a runtime exception. Yes or no? So now, is null pointer exception reachable? You get this now, صح ولا لا? So how you order your the most general will be the lowest, صح? Okay, you get that, Moy, okay? Yes. If it's not null pointer exception, we'll go to runtime exception. But here, all null pointer exceptions are what? So does it match in the first catch block? ماشي؟ طيب يا بنات, we still need like 30 minutes and we'll see some Q&A and some summary next time. And that's it. Let me just stop recording and let's see what we have here. Okay, good. ماشي, let me take attendance يا بنات.